Hi there. Welcome to Wedding Industry Law School. My name is Rob. Today we're going to be talking about what is case law and why is it important to wedding industry professionals. So, from a broad standpoint, law as it relates to the interactions between a wedding professional and a client are going to come from two primary sources. The first source is legislation, regulations, whatever the legislative body of whatever state you live in, what they're doing. The General Assembly, the Senate, the representatives of whatever state in, they make the laws, legislature, okay, the legislation. All right, that's the first source, and we'll talk about that at a later time. The other primary source of law as it pertains to wedding and industry professionals is case law. Laws that stem from opinions of appellate courts. Case law. All right. So what is appellate court? What are appellate courts? What is case law? Let's start from the lowest level, which is the trial court. When two parties have a problem, one is going to sue the other or vice versa, and they're going to end up at a trial, at the trial level, in which a judge or a jury is going to determine certain facts. Was the light green or red? Was the defendant guilty or not guilty? Factual determinations. They call it, the jury, the trier of fact. In some instances, when it's just a bench trial, the judge will be the trier of fact. Is the witness believable? These type of things. These are the type of decisions that are made at a trial court. The matters of fact, adjudications of fact. Did the glove fit? Okay. Was O.J. Simpson there that night? Now, other decisions are made at the trial level as well. We call these matters of law. So you have matters of fact, did the glove fit? And then there's matters of law. And the judge determines the matters of law. A lot of times the matters of law come down to evidentiary questions. So what type of evidence can the jury hear when they are determining issues of fact? Okay, so for example, is a lie detector test appropriate evidence for a jury to hear, the results of a lie detector test? Or is a particular expert qualified to break information down for the jury so they can determine a particular fact? When it comes to contract matters, many contract matters are issues of law, matters of law that the judge determines. So, for example, whether or not a non-party can enforce a contract, whether or not somebody that didn't even sign the contract, if they have the rights to sue somebody based on that contract, a judge is going to make that decision at the trial level because it is a matter of law. So you have matters of fact, issues of fact, and then you have issues and matters of law, typically dealing with evidentiary burdens and what the jury can hear or not hear. Okay? So, big deal. What does that mean? All right. Whenever you hear somebody come out of court and they're huffing and puffing and all the journalists are in front of them with the microphones and stuff like that, and they say, we're going to appeal the decision. This doesn't end here. We're going to appeal to the highest court if it takes us all, to the Supreme Court. What they're talking about most of the time is they are appealing a decision made by the judge based on a matter of law, not a matter of fact, a matter of law. So if you don't agree, like, I object, Your Honor, a polygraph exam should not be, considered appropriate evidence because it's not science. And the judge goes, no, I love psychics. Let's have some more psychics in the courtroom. Dionne Warwick, love it. Let's call the 1-900 number and get some evidence in here from the psychics. So the party objects to that. Judge, I don't agree with you allowing psychics in here. I don't agree with you allowing polygraphs. So what happens is sometimes that's appealed right away. Most of the time it is, you go to the conclusion of the trial and then you walk out on the steps and declare that you're going to appeal. That is typically what you're appealing. You're appealing what you consider an erroneous decision or an improper decision that the judge has made based on a matter or about a matter of law. So then what happens is that issue goes up to, and I say up because the trial level we say is kind of at the bottom, but the issue goes to another court called an appellate court. It's an appeals court. I am appealing to the justices or the judges at this appellate court to overturn a decision that was made by the trial court lawyer or trial court judge about a matter of law. And so the appellate court will hear that issue. Okay, can a non-party enforce this contract? Okay, what do we have to say about that? And so what will happen is that the appellate court will issue an opinion. They'll put the facts that they use to rely on their opinion. They'll analyze the issues surrounding those facts, and then they will establish whether or not that first judge was right or wrong. And that's what's called an opinion. That's an appellate opinion. It's case law. And that becomes essentially the law for future judges to use at that trial level. So that the next time that comes up, Your Honor, I don't want psychics in here. And guess what? There's a case law that says you can't allow psychics in here. As a matter of law, you are not allowed to have psychics come in and provide evidence to this jury. And the judge is like, okay, I have to do that because I'm bound by the decisions of these appellate courts. And you, of course, know that there are multiple appellate levels. So typically in a state, you're going to have the trial court, you're going to have a first level of appellate, usually called the Court of Appeals, and it depends on what state you're in, but it's principally the same. And then if you don't like the opinion of the Court of Appeals, it goes up to your state Supreme Court, not the U.S. Supreme Court. Excuse my dog, she's excited. Not the U.S. Supreme Court, but the state Supreme Court. And then on and on. If you don't like the decision, then it goes to the Supreme Court. So then it becomes the law. It comes to the law of the land. So if the Supreme Court of the state rules a certain way or issues a certain opinion, then the Court of Appeals has to follow that, as well as the trial judge. It kind of flows from the top. So that is the primary place where we get the laws that we use in our contracts that you use with your client. So when it comes down to the concepts of limited liability, force majeure, non-refundable deposits, liquidated damages, typically these are coming from judicial opinions from the appellate level, because somebody at some point has argued that a judge got something wrong, made an error, and they've appealed that decision to an appellate court who has then issued an opinion, and we are now bound by the opinion in that appellate decision. So when we argue in front of a judge our objection to the psychics coming in, we are making our arguments based on case law. We're making our arguments based on a previous appellate decision. And those appellate decisions form, as I mentioned, the basis for the language in our contracts, because we want to make sure that our contracts will withstand argument at the trial level. Your Honor, this individual is not listed on the contract and therefore is a third party, and therefore they can't enforce the rights in this contract, XYZ. And based on decision X, that's why it's in this contract the way it's written. These type of things, why your force majeure clause has these words in it that you might not understand. At some point, some appellate court somewhere probably said you need to have these words in there. So that's why these things are important. So in a future episode, we'll talk about statutes and how that applies. But I think that's from a 40,000 foot view. that is your basic understanding of where and why we get case law and why case law affects your contract. And I think that's all I got to say about that. If you've got any questions, if you have any suggestions, leave a comment. If you have any experience with this, if you want to leave a war story, if you want to talk about, hey, I have a case or whatever, I saw an interesting case, leave a comment about it and we'll talk about it. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.